Hit with the flavor. Yes, the younger soul, public.
Hey, there we are. Good morning, everybody. I'm almost ready. I was asleep, all the way asleep 23 minutes ago. It is Slow News Day, morning edition. My name is Steve Boygan, and I am hanging out in Central California Very good to be here. Got a bunch to talk about. Wonderful show this morning. Gonna be joined live by Addy, who's been outside in front of the Maxwell trial for the last week or so, doing some phenomenal on the ground journalism. Lots of other stuff to get through. All of the regular donate links for the show are working and operational. Please hit those up if you can. QR code in the you guys got a couple of emails saying the QR code doesn't scan. So if you're trying to hit up the Matrix Genetics people, just do that on Twitter or Instagram at Matrix Genetics. I'll work on getting a border around the code, whatever I need to do for that. Really busy week coming up. We might get into that a little bit later into the show, but let me go ahead and bring up right now from New York, I think.
Yes, sir.
Addy Ads, man, you have been doing wonderful, like actual journalism the way that I remember it from back in the day. And thank you and welcome to the show. How you doing, brother?
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me, and I appreciate the praise. I really do. It feels good to get recognized, especially after, the really oppressive censorship that I've been experiencing this year, particularly on YouTube. Yeah, it was quite discouraging in the middle of the year. There, I kind of got lost in censorship purgatory there for a bit. So, seeing all this recognition come is I'm really appreciating it.
I know all about the the censorship purgatory. That's for goddamn sure, man. So the whole thing is so weird to me. The whole trial is so weird to me. It looks to me from a purely observational point like this is almost like the deep state flexing nuts. Like we can do this, we can get away with this. We can put the head of our US division in your courtroom, drop the names of her victims, and nothing is going to happen. Like, what's your impression of this whole thing so far?
Yeah, it's been a very interesting process, partially a learning process for me as well. It's my first trial that I'm covering, boots on the ground. And in that sense, I've had to be a quick learner, which I think I have been. I've been talking to as many people as I can, mostly independent reporters. The mainstreamers are a little less talkative for whatever reason. So in that sense, being able to collaborate with a lot of really cool people like yourself, Roberta Glass is here of the True Crime Podcast. She's here just about every day, and Joe Neerman of Good Logic as well. So the learning from him has been great because he himself is a New York litigator. But yeah, as far as the trial itself, it does appear to be a much shorter trial in duration than we anticipated. We thought it was going to be about 6 weeks. But at this rate, with the prosecution resting on Friday and the defense planning to do so by the 21st, it's likely this could be wrapped up by Christmas time or shortly thereafter. So in that sense, it makes things a little more easy for me logistically because as people know or may not know, New York is really, really expensive. But fortunately, it really worked out well. I'm couch surfing right now, and I'm going to be pet sitting over the holiday break. So I'll be here pretty much by myself, holding it down, the Night's Watch, so to speak. So in that sense, it really has worked out. But yeah, it's a little bit confusing, like you mentioned, with the witnesses, just 4 witnesses so far. Where are the others? People are asking. Another thing that's been really confusing is why does the prosecution care about redacting the names on the flight manifest? It really doesn't make sense. Why would they care about that? You think the defense would be more keen to keep that information on the low, but it is actually the defense and Miss Maureen Comey who has done that. And even the judge was like, why are you doing that? It's understandable to redact the witness names, right? Because they're all going pseudonymously to the stand, with the exception of Miss Annie Farmer.
Mhm.
So even her name didn't even need to be redacted, but they blocked out every name on the flight manifest. So in that sense, it's been, I think, pretty confusing from just about everybody I've talked to, even the people who are more prone to give the benefit of the doubt to the government in this situation, which I tend to not be in that camp. Although I do try to be as neutral as I can during the trial, but I got to say, even talking to Mr. Lee of Inner City Press, we've done a few spots there outside the courtroom. He said the same thing. This secrecy, it's just making people doubt, more dubious of this whole process.
One of the things that I've always heard about, like when normies are trying to shit on, I don't know, conspiracy people, like the one thing they'll always concede is, well, if the processes were more transparent, if the organizations were more transparent, you wouldn't have theories that built up around them because you would have concrete answers and blah, blah, blah. And there's merit to that. But what the people forget to follow through with is that every time there's a huge freeze on information and a bunch of wild shit happens, and all like the last several times a bunch of wild shit happened, it was the last several specific group of actors. Like it's hard to not draw a parallel without, even concrete evidence, especially where it comes to like child sex trafficking and Ghislaine Maxwell and the network that she's purported to be involved in. Getting immediate hard evidence when you're going up against multiple intelligence agencies who have like world governments in their pocket may not be the easiest task for anybody. But I could see how even a casual passerby could observe the Maxwell trial and be like, is the prosecution trying to throw it?
Sure, sure. Yeah, that's a great question. And there's two, I think, delineations that could be made there. One, that question is a great one. Are they trying to throw it? And the other one is, do they actually want the truth out? And I don't think they're mutually inclusive. It could be the case that they do want to win, albeit very, lamely or somewhat, disappointingly winning, but at the same time, not want that truth to get out. But that being said, I could see, Maxwell getting acquitted at least partially. I'm not sure that she's going to get acquitted entirely, um, but that's my contention at this point. Is probably a partial acquittal on some charges, and then some charges I think are going to stick because again, the government. They don't really lose in court. They tend to not lose, and they tend to make sure that they don't lose. Which in it of itself it's another discussion of uh, why so few cases go to trial. Is only very wealthy people really are able to even afford to go to trial, which shouldn't be the case. The government they tend to threaten people with maximum charges, and say you got to plead to one of these charges, or you're going to get the book thrown at you because we know your pockets aren't deep. You can't afford anything but a lame public defense lawyer who may be in the pocket of the prosecutor or the DA, anyways. So in that sense, the American justice system definitely is two tiered, which that's another conversation entirely.
um I let's I kind of want to back up for a minute because I honestly I don't know a lot about you, and that feels like a failure on my part. so um so in order to help me overcome my own failings, Addy, why are you in front of a courthouse with a camera in the fucking first place?
Great question. No worries, sir. No worries at all. Yeah, it was, I came to this knowledge of this Epstein network. I want to say it was late 2018 or so. And initially, I was just kind of peripherally interested in it. And I do want to give a big shout out to Sean Atwood, who I came into this state corruption investigations kind of from left field, so to speak, or right field, whatever the phrase is, through studying the corruption and the prison systems in the United States and the United Kingdom. because I just found his story so fascinating. He was my first interview, and because of that, I learned more about the family court system and how messed up that is, and then the more and more about the intelligence agencies and their participation in this and how they really are the puppet masters in these things. So I really never set out to cover geopolitics. I always kind of abstained from even paying attention to it. There was a brief period in high school when I was a senior where I would read the New York Times every morning on my laptop and in chemistry class because it was just this really kind of joke of a class. But after that only lasted for a few months, and then I came to the conclusion that I was better off just spending time on my academics. I often would get upset or rattled from reading stuff in the news, so I made the conclusion that I should just disengage. I went to university, and then my senior year coincided with the 2016 election, and by that point, it was so in your face. I was you almost had to learn a little bit about what was going on, and then in the next couple years, I spent 1 year in Japan, and that's when I was really diving deep into the prison state and the prison corruption. And then I started to learn slowly about Epstein, and more, I would study guys like Ryan Dawson, who have been studying this for years and years. And I kind of, almost accidentally came to be a pretty good source of knowledge on the Epstein saga. So with the 2020 Corona panic, everybody was kind of locked in their houses for a bit on the internet, and there was this huge bull market and demand for good information and great questions being asked. So I ran this COVID scientist roundtable, and we just talked about everything that was going on. I would kind of moderate, not being the science expert, but I would have PhDs on my show, and that kind of morphed into interviewing more and more authors and reporters, and really getting deep into geopolitics. And then this independent investigator, George Webb, kind of took me under his wing, and I was traveled around with him for about 6 to 8 months. Going around covering mostly election stuff, and I did do a couple stories in Atlanta that popped off. I was actually the one that broke the Harrison Deal death, which I don't think a lot of people know that, because the video got taken down after like 2 days. It started to blow up, man. It got to almost 30,000 views in 2 days, which was the fastest I had ever done a report that blew up like that. And then George did one on Pascal Ferrier's ballot trafficking over on the Peace Bridge in Buffalo, which I also followed up on in person. Got some water thrown at my face by these BLM Antifa folks, and again, both those videos, they went up to 29,000, and then the view count just stopped. And then like a day later, the neighborhood news channel got terminated. And the other one that was big was the armed ballot trafficking story, where you had this armed overwatch overseeing the Enterprise trucks moving ballots from the election prep center in Atlanta, Fulton County, to the sheriff's office, who at the time was Ted Jackson, started his career at the FBI. And that's kind of my idea is the FBI really tries to get these sheriffs in their pocket from the get go, which I don't think I've seen anybody else kind of observe that. But just looking at a guy like Grady Judd, why is he always on the YouTubes and the socials? We always hear about Grady Judd, and people seem to like him a lot. But then you look into him and you realize he's FBI too. But the story itself, I put out mid-December, and it was just kind of floating on the internet for a bit. And I met a reporter at the Capitol building, and I told her about it, and she was like, "Wow, that's amazing." She bumped into Patrick Byrne at a social gathering that evening, told him about it. He tweeted it out, and that actually got it to the front page of the Gateway Pundit. Jim Hoff featured it for a day or two, couple days there. Byrne lost his Twitter account like a day or two later. I lost my YouTube account, which was at like 4,500, and that was all the first week of this year of January. So lots going on there. Obviously, the 6th was that day or that week. I was there covering.
Me too.
Doing coverage on the 6th. Oh wow, you were. That's fascinating. And I just want to say, I actually didn't vote in this past election because
Either.
we're getting painted as these insurrectionists just for doing independent coverage and reporting of what's going on. We're just trying to tell people what's going on. So that's something too that a lot of people my age It's not something I blurt out in public. For example, I was there on the 6th, because you don't know who's listening. You don't know how vindictive someone in the near vicinity may be. The FBI showed up at my brother's house, which was my last residence, and that was part of their intimidation operation, which they did across the nation, going to Alaska, busting down some married couple's door for laptops, going to rural Wisconsin, all over the nation. They did
We
this.
had our first pre-crime arrest of the year, based not on the Capitol in DC on January 6th, but on an event in Tallahassee, Florida on January 6th, in solidarity with the Stop the Steal protest. There's a guy named Daniel Baker, I think he was ex-military. I'm not 100% on that, but he was a left-winger. He was like an Antifa guy, and he put up a Facebook post about, we have to go to the Capitol. We have to protect protect our city from these, right-wing hordes, blah, blah, blah. And said something about drive them out with every caliber. FBI kicks in his door. He's still in prison. He's got convicted on a crime he may have gone through and committed, not from any criminal activity he engaged in, but on the supposition of future criminal activity. That's a legit thing in the United States of America that Whitney Webb and I started reporting on in like 2019 that nobody else picked up on. Fucking Bill Barr called his shot, said that they were going to do a pre-crime thing in like June or July of 2019. And it didn't go live until January of 2021. But when it went live on January 1st, 2021, boy, they sure got moving on it.
Wow.
See,
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Approach activism and journalism from a space of criticizing the prison carceral system, because almost always, and I know a lot of these, well, not a lot of these guys, because there's not a lot of us that do it, but I know like the handful of people that I know that come from that space, Kriston Harris, Kevin Gostola, like they're some of the most informed and like just far-seeing people, because if you study the prison industrial complex that we have here, you understand finance, you understand economics, you understand sociology, you understand politics, you understand the laws of power and how they, like it's such a complete education that people never fucking think about.
Yeah, that's a great point, sir. I can't remember who said it, but they basically said if you study the prison system of a nation or a society, you can see at the micro level, in a very raw level, and I'm paraphrasing here, how that society operates. Obviously in the States, if we were in prison together, I wouldn't be able to speak with you, sir, because I would fall under the command of the Chicano gang, which is funny in itself. And it's like I couldn't even speak to Mexican nationals. I could only speak to Mexican Americans, right? And that kind of, I think, is a bit revealing of our history of racial segregation. Even in schools, you'll see in schools at lunch, the kids, they separate themselves by race many times. They don't mix with each other, and there's tension between Latinos and blacks, especially in Chicago. I know. You see these.
Yeah, always has been. Holy shit, boy. I grew up in Indiana. I had a bunch of friends in Chicago, and I've been fucking around up there since the 80s. Fucking, I remember.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great point. If you want to really understand a lot of the darkness and the corruption of American society, the prison system is a great education to do that. Really great bang for your buck in terms of understanding that.
Well, what I've noticed is that it gives you like, because I don't think you can get out of this business without a significant amount of PTSD. But it gives you like I don't know, way more humanity than most people who approach journalism are ever going to have in their entire lives. Because most of the people that come into this space are, let's be honest, there's a lot of attention seeking milk toast, like not necessarily talented, but either just good looking enough or like just good at understanding marketing enough
Right.
to promote themselves. Very rarely do you get people who are like, I recognize a problem in my society. I would like to inform people about this thing so that maybe we can do something about it. Let's all get together and learn some shit and solve some problems. Not necessarily the best formula for entertainment, you know.
Mhm.
But that's why when you find channels that do what you do, that's fine, you know, shows that do like a lot of what the MCSE network shows do. With our friends Convo Couch, who are going all over the world covering elections. They just got back from Guatemala. They're going back to Honduras again in a month. Like, they're, you know, just on the ground doing the shit to show people what it's like when you walk outside your door and meet new people and fucking how other systems operate. You know, that's rare. So I really do. It's like it's awesome when you get to talk to somebody who comes from that background or has that understanding, because it's a whole different conversation. And the prison stuff is stuff that like we've got into a bunch on the show, because I have a bias personally against the prison system.
It's hard not to have one if you understand what's going on.
Yeah, and getting the shit kicked out of you by the cops a few times, that'll.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of police, I gotta say.
What's the court schedule this week? Because I know they had a fake corona emergency, much like the Julian Assange case last year in September. They had one of those where the prosecution got their ass kicked all week and came in on one day and was like, coronavirus, gotta go.
Sure, sure. Yeah, they asserted that it was not corona related, and we did resume court the next day. That actually happened Thursday morning. We got there around 10:15 a.m. is when they adjourned. The Judge Nathan did. But yeah, we do have a few days off here, so I'm using it to get back to everybody. Been getting really just inundated with messages, which I'm really appreciative of. And I believe I'm actually on the combo couch later today. That's Fiorella Isabel, right? That she's on
Yep.
that. Yeah. So I'm going to be on there 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tonight or this afternoon if people want to check that out. But as far as this week, we got Thursday is our first day going back to court, and then Friday and Saturday, and then which is kind of interesting. They're having court on Saturday. So yeah, just 3 days this week. So I got a couple days to catch up, do summaries and analysis, do interviews with people. And I'm gonna try to do some more on the ground stuff. Try to get out to some of Epstein's apartments, Maxwell's townhouse, maybe, and do some shorts there.
In fact, in about a half an hour at the British consulate, there is a large Assange rally in New York City. In fact, I saw that somebody in the chat too dropped extra information on that. Yeah, if anyone can make it to New York City today, demonstration for Assange at the UK consulate, 47th and 2nd Avenue at noon. And that's going to be Chris Hedges, Roger Waters, I think Susan Sarandon is going to show up. Like there's a number of people that are actually like informed. Well, Hedges is and Waters is informed about the Assange thing. And 44th, thank you, Hamza. So yeah, if you're anywhere, if you're listening right now and you're anywhere near New York City, please get down there. I tried to like elbow presidential hopeful Dave Smith into turning up to this thing because I know he's got to work in New York City on Monday. He's got a show that tapes. I don't know how late it tapes, you know, like if they don't go on until midnight, showing up for a thing at noon is probably not gonna, you know, work out. But I mean, if you want to be president and you claim to be in the camp of people who are supporting Julian Assange, and he just got illegally, his extradition just got illegally approved. He isn't on a plane yet, but the extradition got approved. It seems like you would want to show up for a rally of support of this person that you have said you support in your hometown when you have to work that day. But maybe I'm just asking too much out of people.
Yeah, it's a good point. I actually would like to connect with him. I only recently discovered him and his work. It was actually through the Four Horsemen Reed Coverdale. I'm actually on his show tonight at I think 9. So shout out to those
He's a
guys.
solid dude, man. Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't know about the rally until shortly before we went on. Somebody texted me. I was actually on Kat April Waters' show yesterday, and she texted me about it. I was like, "Oh shoot, I'm gonna try to get down there, but I'm all the way in Greenwich Village, so that's like 40-50 minutes away. So
Mhm.
I think I'm gonna try to do it, but that's a good, almost 2 hours of transport. So I just hope I don't get there and they're all done talking. But I'm sure Leroy Johnson's going to be there, and maybe Kara Castronova. I've bumped into them a couple times over the past few weeks. That was cool meeting Leroy because he's so prolific with covering protests and protest footage. And I met him and he told me his name. I was like, wait, you're that guy, the Leroy Press guy that posts all the videos? He's like, yeah, that's me. I was like, oh, that's awesome. Because even going back to last summer, when we're all watching the protest videos and some of us are covering them, I was doing some coverage in Eugene, Oregon after Floyd's death. He was probably the most prolific guy on the internet in terms of covering that. So that was really cool to meet him. Great guy. He's got that thick New York accent, which I love to listen to. I only ever heard it on movies, but now that I'm in New York, you hear the marshals talk to each other, and it's there's this guy when I was going in, I had some tea in my cup or my screw-on water bottle, and he was smelling it to make sure there was alcohol. He smells it, and he's like, "It's Friday," you know what I mean? And it's just I love that accent. Hearing it, it's like you only ever heard it on TV until you come to New York. So it's great stuff.
It is. One of my favorite things about traveling in general. I've done a lot of it. Is that shit, regional accents and regional dialect, slight changes in like a word, or you move a letter, or you drop the emphasis, raise it on shit. I'm a fucking nerd. Whatever, dude. It's fun.
Yeah, no, I love it too. Yeah, it's even like growing up in Wisconsin, it's very quite insular. Like I never had met a Jewish person until I was almost 18. And you got that kind of thick, almost Canadian, Minnesotan accent that sometimes will sneak out when I'm talking to other Midwesterners. Very similar to the Chicago accent, actually. So I had never even met a Southerner really. There was one guy on my soccer team. His mother was from South Carolina, and she still had a bit of a drawl. But other than that, now that I'm living in the South, I'm based in the Carolinas. You hear a lot more of that Southern accent, which I love. Especially with the internet, it seems to be going away a bit. The kind of that regional accent, just because of the crystallization of audio and language on the internet and other media. But North Carolina is a state very, very interesting because there's a wide array of accents depending on where you go and what city you go to. And I was actually talking to somebody, one of my great friends from North Carolina, and she was telling me that back in the day, maybe 20 years ago or so, she could actually tell what city people were from in North Carolina. And that blew my mind. I was like, wow, that's amazing. She's like, yeah, I could tell you from Raleigh or Charlotte or Winston-Salem based on the accent. So I found that amazing.
I I lived in Boone, North Carolina for a little bit, on the like Tennessee border side, right?
Okay.
Appalachian Mountains, Appalachia State University is there. It's north of was that Asheville?
Yep.
And
That's
then
over by Linville a little bit, eh?
yeah,
Yep.
and
Yeah, I've
then
been up there.
way back in the day, I used to do Renaissance festivals for a living, and I got hooked up with a company because you don't work in the winter; you just follow the weather with this thing. So you're usually off like not October, but like some in November, December, and January. And I got hooked up with a company who did light and sound for stage sets and stuff. Great money, and we worked in Wilmington, North Carolina, and for 2 winters, I worked on the set of Dawson's Creek.
Wow, that's
And
awesome, sir. That's
that
great.
was hella weird, But like
Yeah.
Wilmington, the Wilmington, North Carolina accent doesn't sound like North Carolina at all. And you get like, I don't know, 50 miles off the coast and you're back into that real thing, probably less than that. But I mean, it really sounds like North Carolina. off the coast, and it's kind of the same. You go up the coast of North Carolina and get into Outer Banks and shit, and there's almost no accent there.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah.
Fucking
Ryan Dawson's from there.
Yankees bled it out of them.
Yeah. That's something too. It's like a lot of the Carolina people, they're like, "Hey, I just want these Yankees to stop, moving to our state." And I don't really blame them, even though I'm a northerner myself. I'm about as far north as you can get as far as the states goes. But yeah, I just noticed Southern people, they're a lot more polite than Northerners are in many instances.
There is something to be said for Midwest hospitality, though.
For
There.
sure.
Although you kind of gotta like it's sort of demographically limited.
A bit.
The Midwest hospitality.
A bit. I've pointed that out to people too. It's almost like I can blend in almost anywhere in the world, except the place I'm actually from. And that was even I think really affected the way my psychology and personality manifested when I'm half white myself and very light skinned, but nonetheless, you're the only non-complete white person uh, growing up in school. You do stick out, for better or worse. So that definitely I think affected the way I identified, and being a mutt, so to speak, or biracial. That definitely, there's identity issues that go along with that. I think anybody who's mixed race can testify to, especially growing up in the States, like we mentioned, going back to that categorization that seems to be so ingrained in our society. But you meet great people who are intelligent and evolved and have high consciousness, and that stuff just doesn't matter to them. It's more about connecting at a higher self-actualization level. So that's what I've loved about this work, is meeting just really smart people who know this stuff and love talking about it. Because in college, I I liked my friends, but they often weren't wanting to talk about a lot of this stuff, and didn't have the knowledge to do so. So I've always loved reading and kind of doing some intellectual swordsmanship at times with debates, and just on having a dialectical approach to unhashing ideas. I've always loved that, and that's what I think initially got me into this. Was I was a huge consumer of podcasts because I loved just learning, and it's a great way to learn too, because you can fold clothes, you can do it while you're driving, you can do it while you're eating. Not as deep learning as reading is, but it's very convenient for people who have to do more than one thing at once. So I think that's how I learned how to be good at podcasts, was listening to a guy like Tim Ferriss, who is one of the best to do it. I think his business podcast is usually number one on iTunes. So listening to him and guys like Sean Atwood too, because you listen to guys and he's gotten way better. I have to admit, he's gotten much more humble, and he's gotten much more, I think, educated. But I couldn't even listen to Joe Rogan back in the day. He was so arrogant. He was such a pseudo intellectual. You could tell he thought he was smarter than he was. I don't think he's dumb, but I don't think he's his IQ, his raw intellectual power doesn't impress me. What impresses me is his open-mindedness and how he has gotten more humble as he's gotten older. But then you listen to a guy like Tim Ferriss, and he really lets the interview breathe and have that breathing room for not because there are a lot of interviewers, and I would say most mainstream interviewers going to guys like Charlie Rose and guys like that. It's like they think they are the interviewee and the interviewer. They're talking over the interviewee and cutting in. And I just noticed Ferris, he would just let the interviewee, have that space to unpack things. And likewise with Sean Atwood too, probably the best to do it on YouTube. Certainly in this space, I would say. And I'm not really allowed on YouTube, so that's probably why I don't include myself up there.
I've found that it's almost you get way more out of every guest if you let them talk themselves out between questions. You know what I mean? Like and the impulse to interrupt is always there for every interviewer, because the theory, at least for me, the working model is, if there's somebody that I find interesting based on the work that they're doing, if there's a particular article or series or set of videos that like has been impactful to me or has helped me learn, then I'll have them on and ask them questions about their work. If there's somebody that I feel like is like an incredibly smart human being and I don't necessarily consider myself one of those people, then I will have them on and ask them questions that I find interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a surprise guest. I'm going to pull up a friend of mine and yours. Ryan Christian, the Last American Vagabond, has joined the stream. What's up, my friend? How you doing?
Hey guys, what's going on? Thanks for letting me in.
We're talking guerrilla journalism and some Maxwell trial and spirituality and the meaning of life and coke and hookers and all that kind of stuff.
Sounds like my kind of conversation. All right. Well, I didn't mean to stop the conversation. What are you guys talking about right now?
Interview styles, man, and like how people approach interacting with a guest, and like what kind of goes through, the processes that we go through. I guess, having a conversation with somebody, because apparently there's a lot of different ways to do that, and a lot of different things that you can get out of it.
Yeah, there's one of the most obvious contrasts, especially for my audience, is to look at something like my interview and then go watch Taylor Hudak's interview. And both are, in my opinion, I mean, not to compliment myself, but both are well done, and I think Taylor does an excellent job, but it's very different. She is no nonsense, just right to the point, asking them the question, letting them explain their answer, and then just jumping to the next point. Because I mean, really, what are people there for in the most regard? They're there to hear the interviewee, to hear what they're bringing to the table. But, for me, I come at it more of a conversation, where I feel like I want to offer up my thoughts back and forth, and then let that maybe trigger some new thoughts from them. And, I actually find that's often why in my interviews with people, like I got this a lot about my Catherine Austin Fitts interview recently. They said, oh man, there are things that you guys talked about that I haven't heard her really put a fine point on here or there. And I feel like that's because I'm offering up my perspective, which kind of shifts it a little bit, but there's good and bad, because I get a lot of people that don't like that I'm poking in my thoughts.
No, I'm right there with you. And I mean, dude, we've had several shows together, Ryan. It's I would rather it feel like we're hanging out than an interrogation.
Right. I agree.
But I'm also, I was talking with Addie here just a little bit ago, like hardwired to not like the police. So anything that feels like an interrogation inherently is going to make me nervous. If I'm nervous, that's a shitty interview. It throws off the energy with the guest. It's already hard enough doing it through a screen, establish any kind of chemistry. And the guests that I've spent time in meet space with, like we're even better on camera because we've been able to have that physical interaction.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, that's a great point, actually. And that's one of the things that I tried to do, to be disarming as possible. Like, look, it's just you and I having a conversation. There's nobody else here, and you're right. When it's more severe and serious, it does kind of give people a little more apprehension, especially if they're new to interviews, then you're not going to get they won't deliver as good as they could,
I think everybody wants to be on camera, but nobody knows how bad they suck on camera until after the fact, and it's like something like you're either automatically good at it or it's something you really got to work at. And I'm not immediately comfortable, with a camera and a light pointing at me and doing stuff like that, so that was definitely a process for me.
Go ahead, Addy.
I'm going to jump up and get some coffee.
You're going to say something. Go ahead.
No. But please continue. I'm just going to close off my camera and give the floor to you guys for a second.
Yeah.
I was just going to say there's this prosecutorial lawyer that I wanted to interview, but he's very much opposed to the word interview. It's almost like, with his career as a lawyer, he thinks he's going to get deposed or something or interrogated on camera.
Geez, these days, who knows?
Yeah. And so, he's like, I don't do interviews, I do conversations. So even using the word interview sometime with people is, it makes them a bit standoffish, but I try to play it by ear. I try to let it, the interview breathe as much as possible. And
Right.
if I feel that the interviewee is maybe struggling a bit, likewise with yourself, Mr. Christian, I'll maybe pitch in some ideas or some thoughts that might trigger something in the interviewee. But some of them are so well experienced in being interviewed that they just make the job so easy, and they
Yeah.
just go and go. So those are the best, because you just kind of sit back and let them teach, which I really
Right.
love. But yeah, I've been a fan of your work for some time, sir. Over
you.
at the Last American Vagabond. I'd love to have you on my show after the trial's over. My hands are pretty full until then, but I know you, and I know you worked with Whitney Webb, or at least I don't know if you still do, but in the past. So yeah, I'm definitely aware of your work.
Thank you. Yeah. Just let me know. Shoot, Ryan at thelastamericanvagabond.com. I'd love to. Yeah, right now we're still the TLAV team is basically me, Whitney, Derek, Robert, and Taylor. That's the team right now. But
Okay.
yeah, I'd love to jump on and talk about anything, man. I mean, but you're right. I mean, an interview is kind of a living animal, like you got to just adapt and let it go. What one of the earliest things I found out, and kind of a point to laugh about what Steve said, is just go back and look at some of the earlier stuff from anybody. My first stuff is clumsy and hard to watch. You know what I mean? It's a learning process. But one of the first things I learned is, if I like, let's say you make a bunch of notes and you've got all this stuff written out and it's all formulaic and it can be good. But if all of a sudden it goes away from what you thought was the plan, and you only just keep trying to force it back into it can be really clumsy and bad and disjointed. And that's a hard lesson to learn, and you just let it go where it goes.
Yeah, I noticed that too with, depending on the personality of the interviewee, some of them really are much more inclined to go that conversational, go with the flow type of thing. And I likewise, one of my early interviewees, he was very much like that. And I just kept trying to stick to the script, so to speak. And it really made it, I think, difficult in retrospect for him to kind of get comfortable and let the interview flow. So yeah, you kind of got to play it by ear, depending on who you got on your show, I think sometimes.
Absolutely agree.
I've just always kind of like winged it. That's not true. The first time I had Whitney on, I had like 30 pages of notes.
Nice. Well, you know what's something that people don't point out enough, and it's disparaged, I guess, but the concept of like fake it till you make it, that built this country. I mean, that is the reality of life, right? Like you don't just know things inherently, and if you go into things and are, you just got to do your best and almost, pretend that you are what you want to become. It's sort of like, aiming yourself in the right direction and then just build it out as best you can. Like I was just saying with Steve, like my earlier stuff is hard to watch, and it's, you have to go through that process, and get yourself comfortable. That's what I'm trying to tell all these new people out there that are jumping into this. And, we all, and rightly so. I mean, it's never been a better time for more people to have more perspectives and, thoughts on what's going on. And you just got to power through it. Just jump up there one day and start up a live stream. Actually, on a side note, the first time I ever tried to do the daily wrap up, it didn't actually succeed. I got a green screen and I was trying to, it was all clumsy. It was terrible. It was like a green sheet, and I'm trying to get all this to go. And I sat there for like an hour and ultimately just gave up. Was so mad, was so disappointed, was like, it just doesn't feel right. I didn't know what to say. But I got it back up there and did it, the next day and tried again. And it was bad, but if I had just given up, the show wouldn't be here today, and it's just do it. If you want to do it out there, just start doing it. People like us will support you.
Definitely.
I have a flash drive somewhere that has the very first episode of Slow News Day on it that no one will ever see. Ever.
I keep it up there.
Because it was a totally false start. I had a friend of mine who had wanted to do the show with me. We got the guest on, and I like threw a question to my friend and he froze up and just sat there and like not even sounds came out of his mouth, but you could have flown a 737 in it. And like it was bad. The whole thing was bad. And the guest was a comedian, totally fucking understood, came back like 3 months later. We did the original pilot of the show without that dude. And then that's when the show started. But like there was like a false start episode where for about 90 days I was like, I'm never gonna fucking do that again in my life.
That's funny. Yeah,
sure.
It's hard for sure.
Yeah, and one thing too is for people starting, you're definitely going to get detractors right away. I remember when I was live streaming is my channel was still pretty small. The big one that got terminated, and right away I had people coming on and calling me a LARPer and all this, and
Right.
yeah, so you
Isn't
just
that
gotta ignore
strange?
that for sure.
Isn't that strange? I mean, let me ask you guys a question about this. It's interestingly, there's an interesting ebb and flow of how that works, right? And anyone that's done this can see that when you first get into this, there's a period where you start to get a little bit of traction. You know, oh, good, people are paying attention. I got a couple followers. You know, you got a mod, whatever. It all starts kind of coming together. And when there's that first kind of, you know, a hurdle you've overcome, you start getting these people that come after you. Oh, look at you, you're shilling this or shilling that, or oh, you're asking for tips. Oh, you're a fake, you know, whatever. And it's this real, it's like, why me? Like, I'm so small. Like, why do you care? And then all of a sudden you get a little bit larger and it kind of goes away. Right. And you're like, well, that's strange. Why? And they're still focusing on these tiny guys. And then when you get even larger than that, then you get the other people that come back into a larger degree and start doing it again. And what are your thoughts on that? I genuinely feel that there is an effort. There's real people like that out there. Let's put that out there first. But I think there's an obvious effort from wherever you think that's happening, government or institutions or, you know, social media, that are trying to stop people like us from starting something like this. And if they notice traction to a degree, they come at you hard, and they want to undermine the idea of making revenue to keep it going. They want to undermine contentious thoughts in the sphere of politics and whatever else. Oh, that's too far. You can't say that one. Like they're driving you into the Overton window, right? And I think that's what that is. I think there's an effort to stop up and coming people at an early stage, and then up and coming people at a higher stage. What do you think about that?
Definitely. Oh yeah, I agree 100%. And you know, it's my contention that they, whoever the ominous they are, whoever you want to point them as, they want to make it basically impossible to do this sort of work
Right.
outside of the propaganda corporate legacy media machine, because then those people like us cannot be controlled of what we say, and more importantly what we don't say. And I'll give a couple shout outs here to Charlie Robinson. I saw he just did a comment. He's been really supportive of my work, and I would recommend people go check his books out. He's got a great podcast, best intro podcast, I would say. His intro is amazing. And then going back to your question, George Webb, who kind of mentored me a lot for like 6 to 8 months, we would travel around together, and he's got some people. The one guy in particular, he's British, and people think he's either MI6 or something like that. And no matter where he goes, he follows them and just trolls and trolls and trolls. And you got to imagine this guy is getting paid. There's no way he could do this full time. I mean, it's to the point where he messages me still. He still messages me on Twitter. I don't really respond, but he'll send me stuff, and you know, it's pretty bizarre, you know. And it does seem like each creator kind of gets their own unique fan base of just strictly trolls that kind of follow them around. But yeah, it does seem to be the case. They'll notice that maybe people that they see as having potential, they'll try to squash that before they can get any momentum going. And then likewise, people who've already been established, you know, we've seen like Sarah Westall, George, Ryan, all lose their YouTubes, hundreds of thousands of subscribers, which I contend is possibly criminal, just because of all the money, you know, and the revenue that they're missing out on there, which you mentioned as well, going back to you know, attacking the finance.
I agree with that actually strong. I think that the idea of the censor, like you're given a channel, you build something, right? You can, this is not just some little fringe thing where you're making videos. I mean, you build a business, like an actually functioning infrastructure with, you know, around it all, right? Where you're making lots of money. At least back before the real big purges, people were making like millions of dollars a year. I mean, you still can if you get high enough and you say the right things on YouTube, which nobody should be doing. But it's interesting to point out that there's nobody's really tried to do that. And I think you could make a criminal case for how that is, at the very least, that there should be more process if you're have your entire business resting on this channel and then just pull out the rug, you know, like there's something to that. But, you know, especially today, you're not going to get any movement in the judicial system. I think it's all broken anyway. But yeah, the revenue part of that is the most important. I think that they want to get you thinking that revenue, if you ask for any of it, or if you even profit from doing this, that you're somehow bad. That's the underlying sentiment that is just ridiculous. Meanwhile, here's mainstream media who also have, you know, billion dollar budgets. I have to take off now. $1 billion budgets here are continuing to advertise and work with the big pharma companies, yet simultaneously now asking for donations. Don't let that hypocrisy sink in. But that's okay though. We'll attack the small guy for asking for $5 to keep it going. You know, it's quite silly.
My friend Misty refers to it as economic sanctions on independent media.
It's a great way to put it. It really is, in every possible way. And then you add, like he said, the censorship into it. So not only are you having people that are undermining the idea of it, then you have them coming after you anyway from the platforms for doing that. You know, I mean, you name everything, I think, except Cash App right now, which is still there, which surprises me. I've been booted for random reasons. Venmo, which I didn't even have. I only paid my exterminator, and they bumped it because I got censored on some other platform. I think it was Twitter which one controls Venmo? I forget, but.
Aren't LinkedIn and Venmo connected? Maybe that's what it was, because LinkedIn censored me too, and I had just paid for the premium membership, which is, you know, it's not cheap, and they just kept that money. You know, it's like it's criminal. There's no accountability. But
yeah, it is. And that thought I literally had this morning. I was reading an article in the Guardian, something to do with Epstein. Somebody sent me, and they're asking for donations, and I'm like, come on, you guys need donations? Give me a break. You know,
they're failing. I mean, that's what we have to see, is that they're subsidized by the government. Like that's why they're still there. And that happens in regard to businesses and media. I mean, remember before this all started, CARES Act and all this stuff just dumped trillions of dollars, billions at the very least, into the laps of all these big companies under the guise of helping small people. That's why they're okay with actively undermining their own business model to force in mandates, because they've been paid a lot of money to do it. You know, same thing everywhere else. It's crazy.
Ryan, I appreciate you dropping in like this, man. I know you got to go.
Yeah, I love your show, man. I always just love, you know, it's important that we keep interacting, you know, and there's only a few people out there like yourselves that I truly feel are good intentioned. They're fighting for the right things for the right reasons, you know. So always a pleasure to be on.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to follow up with you too, because I do want to have you on my show after this trial wraps up, which could be by Christmas, surprisingly so. So.
Yeah, shoot me an email. I appreciate it, guys. Well, I'll leave you there, guys. Have a good one. Talk to you soon.
Stay frosty.
That's the kind of fun shit that I enjoy about this.
Yeah, that was great. That was unexpected, but yeah, I've definitely been aware of his work at the Last American Vagabond. I read a lot of their articles and videos and such. So yeah, really pleasant surprise.
I was supposed to have a phone meeting with him over the weekend. We got busy. He hit me up right before the show, was like, hey, I'm on my way to the office. I'll give you a call when I get there. And I'm like, I'm going to be live on the air. About half an hour ago, he's like, well, I'm at the office and I'm kind of bored. Can I drop in?
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Sweet. Very fortuitous, surprise there. So yeah, people want to check my interview out with Mr. Christian. I'm gonna going back to doing my general interviews, after this trial wraps up. But in the meantime, just doing straight Maxwell and Epstein stuff. And hopefully I'll get maybe a day or two to kind of poke around New York and check out the some of the tourist stuff. Maybe go to a museum or two, and because I've been here once before, but I was like 11. So this is kind of my first time being here on my own. And interesting time too, after AC, we'll say after COVID. So I don't know, man. New York is, I would never live here. And I truly don't understand why people want to live here, unless you're like, I saw ASAP Rocky in a store the other day. If you know who that is, a rapper.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, guys like him, it's like, okay, yeah, he's a multi-millionaire, but these people my age, I'm like, how are you living here? I gotta imagine all of their money is going to rent and food, and they're just, working 2 or 3 jobs, or their parents are rich, which is obviously another thing too. We call them coasties in Wisconsin, the rich coasties who come in to go to UW.
I spent 15 years in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and way like, or at least it was for a while until it got invaded by Silicon Valley totally, but like tucked away, sort of like rednecky mountain town kind of thing. And everybody who came to visit, because it was a tourist town, because there's 3 national parks that surround it, and it's absolutely beautiful, the California redwoods and all that kind of shit, they were all flatlanders. All of you, you're a flatlander. If you are not living here and are not used to elevation and shit like that. And man, I can't, no, dude, I can't city. I tried the city before. I did. I tried Chicago. I tried San Francisco. I tried a little bit New York. I lived in Brooklyn for about 6 months, and
Okay.
it was too much. It
Yeah.
was.
It's even the people who are very well to do, they have, very little space. And, I have a very close friend slash family member who is in the area, and it's like a broom closet. I'm like, and he's on the hustle though, what his career is doing, like photography and videography, so this is kind of the place to be. But I just feel bad because it's like, man, like I wish you didn't have to be here in this city to do that, especially with regards to AC, the masks and the mandates. In New York City's got to be probably
Oh,
the
you know
most.
what? We can leave YouTube for the rest of the interview and talk like regular human beings. You can do that. I can.
Your show, Colonel. Yeah, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, man. Let me do that. Let's grab the Rockfin link, drop it in the YouTube chat here,
Okay.
and we will have the rest of this conversation without fear of reprisal.
Sure,
What a
sure.
weird world, man. What a weird world. Guys, if you're watching here on YouTube, thank you very much. We're going to conclude the show on platforms that will allow us to talk like grown-ups. So click the link in the chat. You do not need an account to watch the show. If you want to hang out and participate in the chat, you can make a free Rockfin account. If you love us and you want to endorse the channel, you can do that. It's $9.99 a month, and you get all of the paywalled content on the platform. It is a fantastic way to gain access to premium services without having to pay premium prices for individual content creator. Click the damn link. We'll see you soon. There's that.